Well, thank you for joining us today. This is a very special moment in the history of DeFi. As you know, lending, borrowing, these are financial primitives that are really the most important ones for any financial system. And it's also the foundational layer of DeFi. And, well, money markets is a category that Aave has been dominating for the last 5 years. The Aave code base is being holding more than 75% of all of the loans originated in basically every layer 1, layer 2, basically the whole industry. It also, as of today, it holds more than $20 billion of TVL. And, well, so that's one of the key things. It has also passed the test of time, which is critical in our industry. It survived even a once-in-a-century event like Black Thursday. You know, that's something not many can tell without really any scratch. And, well, few cycles, it's matured enough to have survived, cost discipline of all of these bear markets. It's stable, it's strong, and it's also, well, resilient. And also, anyone who's been long enough in this industry, in DeFi, can tell you that historically, every leader in each of their DeFi categories has consistently and historically reiterated and driven the innovation in their category. So I don't think you have to be a wizard to predict or forecast that Aave is going to continue dominating and driving the innovation in their vertical, money markets. And, well, this is what we're going to discuss today. We're going to discuss the next iteration of Aave, Aave V4, and also the vision for Aave 2030, a proposal that is active on Aave's forum. So, well, please join me in welcoming Stani. Stani, it's a pleasure. Yeah, it's a pleasure having you with us today.
You told me something interesting. It was yesterday about you were using Aave way before, back in the kind of predecessor, ETHLend, and you were actually putting loans into, because ETHLend was more of a order matching type of lending protocol, and you were saying that you were already doing those loans and trying to get matched and whatnot. So you've been you probably have been liquidated probably once or twice over the years.
Yeah, I remember it was a really cool experiment, really peer-to-peer. It was tough to match.
Yeah.
But yeah, the interesting thing is how you kept iterating.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And moving, and now, well.
And I mean, just go back in history. That was 2016 when we were starting to think about ETHLend and kind of like I felt really strong about EtherDelta, which was probably like the only decentralized exchange where you can interact with non-custodial addresses and place orders in an order book. And my kind of idea there was that what if you could actually use this value that is on chain, use that as a collateral, borrow against it, and also earn yield on your assets. And back in those times, like the liquidity was extremely low. So if you think liquidity is low in bear market, it was multiple times lower. And the kind of idea of pooling assets together from risk perspective was a little bit too early at that point. So that kind of like auto matching felt the most natural way of creating what ETHLend was back in the day. And I think innovation such as with Uniswap pools and this automated liquidity markets and Bunker even back in those days, and a little bit recently on the lending side, even Compound, proved that you could actually start pooling some of these assets together into the same market and pool the risk. And I think the whole space has evolved quite a lot, but our vision always has been pretty much the same, like how we can actually get this technology adopted globally, because we truly want to build permissionless global financial markets where everyone has the equal opportunity to participate and also receive liquidity earned from Aave with the same conditions. And these protocol iterations for us and kind of like the bigger Aave 2030 vision is just like a signal from us that we're not really there yet from the perspective of Aave and the technology and wider DeFi ecosystem. And I think recently I stated that it will take a decade for DeFi to actually get adoption, and it's going to be slow. And the fact that it's going to be slow adoption is actually a good thing, because finance is a really fragile space and an infrastructure. So you want to adopt something that is really mature, works well, is reliable, empowers a lot of people, and creates just a better financial infrastructure. And that's what we recently. Obviously, before we've been talking with Emilio, and Emilio did recently a really amazing presentation about what we're planning to build. We've been thinking about V4 for roughly a year now, but the broader Aave 2030 vision is about how we can create a more of a long-term commitment and a roadmap as a contributor as Aave Labs into the Aave DAO. And Aave DAO is a decentralized DAO, so there's governance, there's delegations, and there's service providers that contribute technically or with other types of expertise into the ecosystem. And kind of like how we can signal a North Star where we have this innovation-based progress. And Aave has always been about innovation in DeFi and continuing this path until there is like a significant breakthroughs in adoption.
Mm-hmm. So what is the background of this vision, and also what's the main innovation behind your vision and Aave before?
The way I think about innovation is that I guess like one type of innovation is obviously disruptive innovation, which I think was the case in the early DeFi days. There was a lot of new exciting things that captured a lot of liquidity. And we see some sort of disruptive innovations or even simplifications of existing products that just get more adoption and attention. And I think the way we think about innovation within Aave is that we kind of like are setting a goal, like a long-term goal, where we should be at some point, and how do we get there in these cumulative iterations. So a lot of things we usually have in each version. There's basically some interesting kind of like a big bets or features that we're betting that are really going to be significantly empowering for the Aave users. And some of these features are also just incremental progression of previous iterations. So kind of like a little bit of a combination there. And I think our goal also is that Aave, it can be a really good progression for the user experience. And the way we think about the protocol designs and the features and products in general is that we're trying to figure out like what is the main needs of the main user within the Aave protocol, and how we can make that user's life more easier, better, more safer, more efficient, more optimized, as an example.
So you mentioned this solving problems of the users. We know liquidity fragmentation is one of the largest problems we have in DeFi today. So how do you see Aave before solving these problems? How do you see improving the liquidity within all of these chains that Aave currently is the leader?
Yeah, I mean, we kind of created the problem because we deployed in so many networks, or at least contributed, but from a health standpoint. So the way we think about like the multi-chain environment is that if there's some sort of user base and it's wide enough to have a financial layer, it's definitely going to have a financial layer. And that means basically DeFi, that means like Aave, Uniswap, and stablecoins, and so forth. And obviously, then there's the question of how people could move liquidity. Most users might be using just one network. So for example, if you onboard today into you're using DeFi, most likely as a new user, you might not be using, for example, the L1. You might be actually using a rollup instead, optimistic ZK rollup. And the way we think about it is that Aave and DeFi has to be where those users are. There's some exceptions into this thinking. For example, there might be networks where you have some sort of special purpose functionality that can be, for example, gaming or some other activity. But if it's kind of like a more general purpose ecosystem, there's going to be DeFi there. And we saw this early, so we've, with the Aave community, we've been deploying the Aave protocol into multiple networks, and Aave actually is a protocol that is cross-chain governed. So one of the Aave DAO contributors, BGD Labs, they basically built this version 3 of Aave governance, which has this cross-chain ability to vote cross-chain and also make those votes on L2. And what is interesting here is that you don't need really multisigs, but you have true governance across multiple networks. So the governance piece is kind of solved in the cross-chain world that we have at Aave. And the missing component is how to move cross-chain liquidity more seamlessly. And I think most of the users will just use one specific network where they actually want to transact, but there's other types of users that want to rebalance the liquidity between networks and take advantage of that arbitrage. And for those cases, what we're thinking with and it's part of the Aave 2030 vision, is a cross-chain liquidity layer. So in the future, what we're thinking is that there's going to be a Aave network as a main liquidity hub. And down the line, that Aave network can be optimized to serve that main purpose of lending, borrowing, storing liquidity. But then with the component of cross-chain liquidity layer, liquidity can be moved more seamlessly between these different deployments. And this is just based on this feature that we already have in Aave v3 called portals. But in V4, we're optimizing this feature and making it a bit more general purpose. So in that case, what's interesting with a protocol like Aave is that it's a place to store your assets, because you're earning and putting those assets into work, compared to AMMs, for example, where, from what I understand and from my research, is that you kind of like, you don't have that need to actually store liquidity. So most liquidity will be in some sort of liquidity layers like Aave protocol with some sort of tokenization. And that becomes a place where you want to make an efficient layer of moving liquidity across networks. And there's obviously tools like CCIP, which is really helpful, and Chainlink has been working with that, and we're using, for example, for cross-chain Go deployment. And it's a seamless infrastructure that is easy to deploy and utilize. But down the line, what I think is going to happen is that we're able to use ZK proofs actually to move liquidity across networks really seamlessly and feeling instantly. And that is why I'm quite excited about ZK rollups, because you can bypass those waiting periods of what you have in optimistic rollups when you want to move liquidity from one network to another.
That's super exciting. So a lot of new features. I'm wondering how would compare the end game with Aave 2030, if you see any, do you have any comparison? How would it fit?
The maker endgame.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, for my kind of like a knowledge, the way I understand maker endgame is a lot about the idea of sub-DAOs and utilizing sub-DAOs to expand. Aave 2030 is more of a long-term signal, long-term commitment of for innovation and for adoption. So obviously, one of the spearheading innovation is the V4 and optimizing the Aave protocol technology in a way that Aave can be a very efficient market for anyone that, for example, is supplying a lean collateral and borrowing a simple asset like USDC, as an example, with liquidity premiums. And what liquidity premiums helps as well is that you can start actually matching the risk and reward within the same pool more efficiently. So, for example, you might be paying a base rate for borrowing USDC against ETH, but then if you're on the other side of the spectrum and providing more risk into the same market, you're paying base rate and a liquidity premium depending on your position, composition and the collaterals that you have. So what this means is that we're basically we're keeping the same user experience that the Aave markets have. So you can bring all your assets and then use your whole portfolio to borrow any type of assets that you need to. But the big difference here is that we can price that liquidity more accurately, meaning that Aave V4 market becomes the kind of like a best place for you to supply a lean collateral and borrow against it, or to basically supply also in the same market more riskier collaterals that is accepted in the risk profiling. And I think that's kind of like an example of like innovation there that we want to do, and part of the whole 2030 vision obviously is the Aave network, cross-chain liquidity layer, but also kind of like an updated brand identity as well. So the way we think about it is that the way we get into the adoption is going to still be very heavily based on innovation, and the features that we're building, they need to cater obviously more of the normal mainstream users and institutional users. And that's where the smart accounts and segregated collaterals play a big role as well.
I'm also wondering, what's the role of Go in this unified liquidity layer?
Yeah, Go is going to have a significant role, and as we saw with the Emilio's presentation, there's going to be more direct integrations with Go into the Aave v4 protocol, but also with the Aave network. So obviously, one of the exciting use cases for stablecoins is if we get these stablecoins into traditional payment rails. But for example, with rollups, we can't really get there with the cost that we have today. But something like with Aave network and having a Validium chain on top of it, we can actually have very significantly lower cost for that basically fits the criteria of payment transactions when all the transactions are a fraction of a cent. And I think that's going to be like the very interesting component. So obviously, Go is going to be more integrated into the Aave v4. It's going to have a lot of interesting features there. But my kind of like a bigger vision here, and obviously I represent my vision that now has its own vision with all the contributors. But what I would like to see personally is that we can get these stablecoins into actual payment use cases. And we're not really far of that. So if you have a Validium, we have basic account abstraction, and we have just better payment infrastructure in terms of UX experience and integrations. We're not that really far from actually being like technically ready. And then the last layer is actually like how we create exciting new payment applications as well. Because like the way we pay today, for example, on internet is pretty much with cards, but the methods of paying is usually subscriptions, either like monthly or annually. But with things like Validium, you can actually start charging by, if the user is scrolling a page or any different kinds of actions, micropayments, and there's a lot of potential there. And a lot of these things has been, they're not really like new concepts. I think there are people who've been talking about micropayments for a decade, but we're reaching to a point where that infrastructure is getting more better and closer to usage.
We have so many things, so many new things, right? It's really exciting. So sadly, we don't have more time. So to round up, do we have any questions? Cool. Then, well, thank you so much. Thing is
Thank you so much.
exciting. Yeah, waiting for the launch and the proposal.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.